Well, it's a time for us to be grateful because we know that we've had nearly 1 month of exciting football. A football tournament, of course, initially that was questioned, especially by the top powers of the world, why it was given to Russia to host. And the Western media had all the tainted stories about how Russia could be inhabitable for all the fans of the countries participating, but more so, now we know that the tournament has been a success. A success because not only has it been a great time for many fans, but participants also to have some great period to watch matches, but also the teams have been flaring up and showing us their football skills. It's been a tournament that has given us an indication that football has grown to a level in which we don't have master of the game. But before we discuss the World Cup, we have to talk about the state of our own football in Ghana, the state of the GFA, because we know just yesterday we had that news from the court. We'll bring you what the decisions have been, the state of the Ghana Football Association, and then we'll bring you some period of discussions on the subject. But let me just introduce my guests here. I have my colleague here, and Benedict also. Benedict, good morning.
Good morning, well done.
Thanks for joining me. And then also Coach de Graft. He has a first name, Joseph. Joseph, we always say that. Joseph, Katz, Walter, but, Bible also. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
And somebody who has great knowledge of the game, writes, has great literature also written on it and comments, and also works within the circles of football, is Eko Asma. You can get him and a lot of his work on his portal, ekoasma.com. Thanks for joining me, Eko.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And all these people were with us at the beginning of the tournament, and they are ending with us. That's great, exciting news. But let's talk about the state of the GFA. And we're going to bring graphics of what the state is and what the court ruling has been. But tell us, we all already know before we went to court, some, is it 5-man or 2-man?
Well, initially it was a 5-man committee, and then it turned out to be a 7-member committee. And now it's a 2-team liaison team between CAF, FIFA, as well as football here in Ghana. When their main task is to look at the participation of us in international competitions, be it the Under-17 World Cup for the girls as well as the Under-20 for the girls, the Under-Stars participation as well as any other.
Because they are outstanding.
Yeah, any other competition that we will participate in before if now I can use the word, a substantive football association is put in place, because which we will go into, but the 2-man committee, that's the liaison team, is headed by Dr. Kofi Annan with Utia Kenten, technical director of the football association, assisting him. What they've been doing so far since FIFA mandated them to liaise between them and football here in Ghana is that 3 days ago they held a meeting with the Ghana League Clubs Association. GACA, officials of GACA wanted to know, yes, they were not mentioned, according to them, they were not mentioned in the communique from FIFA, so they wanted to know what these liaison team had for them. So they met, and in that meeting 2 key decisions came out. One was that they were going to pay government together with the liaison team, obviously the government, not the liaison team, they were going to pay salaries of the workers of the football association, and also the Under-Stars participation in Africa. Government were going to take government were going to look at how they were going to help the Under-Stars financially participate in that competition. So those were the 2 key decisions that were taken at that meeting. And then on that was 2 days ago, they met officials of the Football Association, staff, workers of the FA. You know, they had already communicated to them that government was going to take care of their arrears in terms of their salary. So they met the FA, also spoke to them and told them that it's not as if they are sacking them, but government just want to go through the process of getting everything clean in terms of our football, after which the workers, be it the general secretary, the deputies, the administrators at the FA, all will be called, and then will resume their work.
But then we know that that's how it's supposed to work in the interim. But Mr. Asma, is this workable? Is that the best way to go?
Well, it's the legal way to go. You know, the law presides over all of our activities. We got to go by the law, and it's not the best case scenario, but this is where we are, and we have to just comply with the law. But we entered a realm of rule of law in our society, because for several years we just abiding by our norms and our culture, and not necessarily by rule of law. Our people don't really like rule of law. Just before I crossed from the other side,
you're not saying that we live in a jungle
you saw me standing
society.
over there.
Yes, I did.
It took a while for me to cross while I was on the zebra crossing. I was waiting. They were supposed to stop.
I was watching you.
Yeah, it took me a very long while before somebody stopped. We don't have that mentality of rule of law. It has to be enforced. We like the stick. So this is a way of changing our society by applying the stick, cracking the whip. So it's an opportunity for us as a society to start recognizing that the usual norms are getting away from us, and we're going to be strictly going by law. It's unfortunate there are casualties in the process, and it happens everywhere whenever there's an emergency or some kind of catastrophe. There are casualties, and it's the duty of the government to make sure that all these issues are addressed adequately. Of course, there are folks that would resist, but you see, most of those folks, they try to, it's almost like a swindle attempt. They wet the bed and then they tell us, oh, this is a water bed. Roland, how would you feel? Somebody is trying to sell you a water bed. They wet the bed and then they say, oh, it's a water bed. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Those resisting the positive change. So that's how I see it right now.
And some of the points that the Attorney General raised at the court for the injunction, or to be the premise on which an injunction could be granted, was because the GFA has become a body to be used as self-aggrandizement, etc. But we also know it's a body of football clubs, and if the sport has been put on hold, it means that on the ground, those who have invested in the sport, those who participate in the sport, those who are supposed to be learning or being groomed will be affected. How would that be? How are they being affected?
They are going to be affected because their normal footballing activities simply cannot go through. But what I would say is, I'll back up what was said before. Abide by the rules of your association, the rules of law. Now, all those clubs who are belly aching about, oh, we can't do, they are all part of the nasty system that's been going on for years.
It's a cycle.
Thank you. You see, so take your punishment. You've made your bed, lay in it. They've all been part of that cycle of the corruption and so forth, buying matches. A lot of the people who are coming out of the woodwork complaining now, they've all been part of it.
I see.
So basically, the whole thing needs to clean out. I agree with the way the government is dealing with it now. It's slow, probably not the ideal way that we would like it, but it's the way that's got to be done in a legal manner. And Ghanaians, I totally agree with what was said. The Ghanaians have to learn how to abide by contracts. When you make an agreement with somebody, abide by it. When you join in a club or an association, find out the rules of operation and abide by them as much as you can. Where you can't, then you've got to realize that there's going to be something, going wrong as a result of you not abiding by the rules.
Okay, so is it that the sport associations had not been monitoring? And to even add to that, I have a question from Andy from Asinfos, who wants to know what will happen to the clubs and their affiliation and registration since the GFA is being liquidated or has to be liquidated. And so what also do they get as club owners, as participants in the association?
Well, what happens is that, it's the clubs that form the FA. I mean, government cannot form the football association, and government cannot dissolve Asante Kotoko. Government cannot dissolve Accra Heartfolk. But the process and the system they want to put in place is to get a very clean association, an association where previous things that we've seen will not repeat itself going forward. So after all said and done, it will come back to these same football people, but there will be laid down rules. There will be clear roadmap to all follow, that this is the way we are going. So these clubs definitely will come back to them. Asante Kotoko, all these clubs will make up the FA. So after everything, it will just come back to them. But now we'll have a roadmap a way to go where we will not see all these things.
So then the body of two people, Otia Kente and the Dr. Kofi Annan, what role then would they be playing, and how would they do the coordination with the clubs that have been the component of the liquidated association to form the new one?
I believe when it gets there, when we get to that point where we have to institute a new FA where they will go to Congress, Dr. Kofi Annan and Otia Kente will not be needed. Their job then will cease, because now they are just taking care of participation in international competitions.
The two.
Yeah.
That's what they've been doing
that's
so far. Liaising with FIFA, government, and it comes back to
do.
But they're supposed to pick people from the ground. That's what it is. But at the end of the day, we know that we have to start from somewhere. What should be the templates then? What should government be looking at? We now have a fair idea. We liquidate, we start all over. On what foundations now do we need to build on?
Well, to begin with, to change some of the regulations, and Benedict was saying, once we have some form of incarnation of FA, the ground rules are set. So the parameters are already set before the clubs will be engaged. So it's the environment, it's just cleaning the environment. Because if you live in a dirty house, it definitely is going to be dirty. Once you are evacuated and it's cleaned out and you come back, it's still you, but the environment has changed. Now there will be contracts. Well, these are pictures of the place before you inhabit them. Now, for whatever goes wrong, you will be tasked with keeping up the maintenance of the building. If this goes wrong, you do this. So you sign on the dotted lines, and then it will be effective. So then the regulations for the clubs to be part of the association will be X, Y, Z. If you agree, you join. If you don't, you don't join it.
Exactly.
So the ground rules will be set. The parameters are set. Once you are in, you abide by them.
Well, it's good that we have a coach here, somebody on the ground, administrator too. So I'll ask this question while we do the transition to the World Cup. We'll have a package to do the bridging, and then we'll come back. But then, on what ground should it be? Should it be that the next football association should only be comprised of those who own football clubs, who participate in football, or just normal administrators? What should be the mix?
It has to be a combination. One, there's a big conflict of interest in the Premier League, for example, where the owners of clubs, all right, are the ones who are the administrators. That shouldn't be.
That should be the first thing to go.
That's right. The first thing that must be cut out and removed is that conflict of interest. Basically, get administrators to do the administration, and the owners of the club.
Like how happens elsewhere.
Exactly.
England, Germany, etc.
That's why they removed it, because of conflict of interest. This is what we were saying before about people abiding by the rules, regulations, and contracts. But the other thing is that before we move forward, all Ghanaians, and for me, it's not just Ghanaians who are in football. All Ghanaians must go through a mentality shift. Mentality shift, abiding by rules, regulations, and not doing things for your own self, but for the good of one, the organization or unit that you're working with, and two, the nation. All right, both. And we must go through a mentality shift. Otherwise, the status quo is going to remain.
Yeah, but the responsibility will rely more on the state.
Okay.
Because elsewhere, even in the first world, there's far worse vice over there than here. But because of the enforcement,
the regulations work.
The enforcement, they crack the whip, regardless of whoever you are. So no matter what, if you leave it to the masses, it won't happen. The state has to lead the charge and actually crack the whip. And that has been a major problem in our world, because the state in itself lacks the political will to actually enforce, because in the process, well, some of their folk here and there may be compromised or affected.
But the state is a reflection of the society.
I know, but
exactly.
But you see, even in the first world, it's about only 1% that control.
Who make the change?
And then the majority of the society are messed up, and yet they make sure that it works.
Right.
So the state has to do much better and make sure that they go all the way and be ruthless with the truthless and the crooked.
I love that.